All right, so we can move on to wide receiver rankings, and then same thing. We'll go through each of our wide receiver rankings ahead of week 10, and then we'll open up to discussion on some of our differences in our top 15s, and then just talk about some players that you can start, sit, etc. for week 10. So I can start again with receivers, and then we can just kind of go around and then eventually discuss. So I'll start with Justin Jefferson, who I have at 1, Jamar Chase at 2. Amon-Ra St. Brown at 3. Nico Collins at 4 against the Lions. It's going to be a good matchup. Number 5, A.J. Brown. Number 6, Malik Neighbors. 7, Cooper Kupp. I got Zay Flowers at 8, my guy. And then right behind him, I have Mark Sky, Drake London at 9. And then Garrett Wilson finishing off the top 10. My 11 through 15 is Puka Nacua at 11 against the Dolphins. Terry McLaurin against the Steelers at 12. Deebo Samuel against the Bucks at 13. Tyreek Hill against the Rams at 14. And then finishing off the list is Devonta Smith at 15 against the Cowboys, a divisional matchup right there. So that rounds out my top 15 receivers. I'll let you guys go through yours and then we'll discuss.
Yeah, I guess I'll go through mine real quick. Number one, I got Justin Jefferson. Two, Jamar Chase. Three, AJ Brown. Four, got Nico Collins. Number five, I have Malik Neighbors. Six, I got Amon-Ra St. Brown. Seven, Drake London. Eight, Cooper Kupp. Nine, Garrett Wilson. 10 is Puka Nacua. 11, I got Terry McLaurin. 12, I have Zay Flowers. I'm really happy to put him inside the top 15. 13, I got Tyreek Hill. 14, Deebo Samuel. And 15, T. Higgins. That's assuming he plays.
All right. I have number 1, Justin Jefferson. Number 2, Jamar Chase. Number 3, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Number 4, Drake London. Number 5, Nico Collins. Number 6, AJ Brown. Number 7, Garrett Wilson. Number 8, Malik Neighbors. Number 9, CeeDee Lamb. Number 10, Terry McLaurin. Number 11, Devontae Adams. Number 12, Puka Nacua. Number 13, Tyreek Hill. Number 14, Deebo Samuel. Number 15, Zay Flowers.
All right, I think we just got to talk about the elephant in the room here. Um,
Oh boy.
Hunter already knows where I'm going with this.
I do.
CD Lamb. Um, I almost feel disrespectful not ranking him inside the top 15, but I also think I have extremely good reason as to why I don't have him inside my top 15. But we can just get right into it. CD Lamb, he got the shoulder injury. I don't know exactly what it was, but the report said that he's a week to week player, or like it's a week to week injury. So,
Was it the
that
AC joint sprain that a lot of these guys are getting? Like we saw
yeah,
Jordan Mason
it's
get?
like
Yeah.
the shoulder injury, AC
Yep.
joint. It's the same thing that Jordan Mason has.
Yeah.
And and when you're designated as week to week, that's not really a good sign. So that's, already one red flag for me. Number two, Dak Prescott is on the IR now. Like he's not playing. And Dak Prescott hasn't exactly been stellar this year, but he was also CeeDee Lamb's best chance of, that's why we ranked him inside. That's why he was number one wide receiver off the board because Dak Prescott targeted him. We thought the Cowboys offense was going to be elite. Turns out they're not. Uh, now with the loss of Dak Prescott, I just think this offense is just going to get even worse. I mean, I feel like if it couldn't get any worse for the Cowboys, it just did. Cooper Rush just throwing CeeDee Lamb the ball. I mean, I've never seen Cooper Rush play a single game, but I can imagine it's probably not going to be anything spectacular. And who knows, maybe I'll eat my word saying that, but I'm going to say that right now. They also have to go up against the Philadelphia Eagles. And at first we would all say, Philadelphia Eagles, last year they were actually one of the worst teams against, wide receivers. But this year they've kind of been in the middle of the pack. Like they're not the best, but they're not the worst either. So I just think, this is a game where, once again, the Eagles are just gonna stomp the Cowboys. Just Cowboys are probably gonna lose like 47-9, like they did to the Detroit Lions. Yeah, that's all I have to say about CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, I mean, a 47-9 loss again would be pretty awesome. I'd be excited if that happened. But
I think
as you
Jerry
said,
Jones would have to fire himself.
I don't think he'd do that. He wouldn't fire himself if the Cowboys lost 3,000-0. But yeah, I obviously rated CeeDee Lamb much higher than you guys. I have seen Cooper Rush play. He's been decent when he's played actually. Not out of this world or anything, but he's made some big plays over the last few years when he started in some games. Mark kind of took the words right out of my mouth. Eagles secondary, bad last year, pretty much perfectly average this year. So they're on the right track for sure. Um, when you are a backup QB and you have an all-pro receiver on your team and no other targets really to look for, you're gonna pass to him a ridiculous amount of times. So that's my reason, one of my main reasons why I have CD Lamb ranked so high. I mean, I could see him getting like 0 points. I think it's possible, but I could also see him getting 25. Like I think he's going to get a ton of targets from this game, whether they're short, medium, or long. I don't know how many he's going to catch and how many are going to be accurate, but I have a lot of faith that he'll have a decent week because of the amount of targets that he'll probably get. Of course, he's a little banged up at the moment, but and obviously, if he doesn't end up playing, then obviously this means nothing what I'm saying right now. But assuming does play, I can see him having a nice outing. He's been good ever since he stepped into the league, and I think he could step up a little bit for this game.
Yeah, Mark took the words right out of my mouth when he said that he just doesn't have confidence in in CeeDee Lamb with Cooper Rush throwing him the ball. Now, I have seen Cooper Rush play, but I don't think it's necessarily anything to, sneeze about. I think he's pretty average quarterback. I mean, he's a backup, like he's not starting. But if there's anything I know about the Dallas Cowboys, it's they'll find a way to lose, which they've done in the last 3 weeks. So, and 3 weeks ago was that loss to the Lions, 47-9, which unfortunately was when we lost in Hutchinson as well. But yeah, I mean, I felt very disrespected, as Mark said. I felt very disrespected not ranking him, and I think the reason being is that the Lions, or excuse me, the Cowboys are a pass heavy offense regardless. And even if it's Dak Prescott under center, if it's Cooper Rush, Trey Lance, whoever is at quarterback, they're going to tend to throw more than run. And I just feel like for that reason, they will probably target CeeDee Lamb. Now, CeeDee Lamb is one of the most targeted receivers in the league. I believe he's second in targets, which he has 84 on the year. So I would not be surprised if they target him. I just don't know how good these passes and the accuracy of some of these passes will be from Cooper Rush. The Eagles secondary, as you guys mentioned, has been an improvement this year. I mean, last year, like you guys said, they weren't that good, but this year, I mean, I think they have them at 19th against receivers, allowing 26.4 on average to receivers. So normally that'd be a pretty good week out of CeeDee Lamb, probably what we'll see around 25 points, but he's banged up, got that shoulder injury, same one that Jordan Mason had. I think if there's anybody that can handle it, it's him. But I just don't know because it's the Cowboys and it's also not Dak Prescott. I'm not really high on Dak Prescott like as is, but now that he's not playing, it's either going to benefit them or it won't at all. And I think I tend to favor more of this is going to hurt them more because, well, they don't really have any other receivers. So I don't know who else they're going to. I mean, they just traded for Jonathan Mingo. So maybe they'll target him a little bit. So yeah, I think it's fair to put him in the top 15. He's right off of my list because I think he's going to be targeted a lot. And I don't think they're going to be running the ball. They're going to be passing downfield. I also think they're going to be down most of this game to the Eagles. I think the Eagles are going to win this game. So I think they're going to be forced to throw the ball. Again, I know he's going to be double coverage. He's injured. He doesn't have his guy throwing him the ball. So I can't rank him top 15. But I will expect to see him get targeted a good number of times, in this game. The last 3 weeks, he's been targeted 14 times, 17 times, and then this past week, 12 times. So I don't know what Cooper Rush will do or whoever's that quarterback, but I expect him to try and find CeeDee Lamb a number of times. It's just going to come down to how accurate he is against a definitely much improved secondary and defense all around in the Eagles.
I mean, I just kind of look at this the same way as Tyreek Hill. I mean, what happened when Tua Tagovailoa left? I mean, it was actually a lot worse than I thought it was like gonna be for Tyreek Hill. I mean, Tyreek Hill in a lot of the games that Tua Tagovailoa was out, I mean, he literally had nothing. He had like maybe two receptions. He averaged maybe like four receptions a game. Like that's not Tyreek Hill. Like I just think this is going to be a similar situation where they're gonna start having CeeDee Lamb play, they're gonna throw him like a screen pass and he's gonna maybe get like 5 yards and he's no longer gonna be playing like in the slot like he normally does, no longer playing like the deep threat that CeeDee Lamb normally is. Like I don't think they're gonna do those same type of plays. I mean, even with the pass heavy offense and being number two in targets, like Adam said, he's also not even top 10 in touchdowns on the year. Like he's 14th, which is still really good, but with the amount of target volume and receiving yards he has, you'd expect him to be, you know, tied with guys like Justin Jefferson, Mike Evans, even
Yeah,
Jamar
he's
Chase,
got four
Drake
touchdowns on the
London.
year. He's got four touchdowns on the year, and two of them came in the same game, which was against the Niners, which again is a team that you're gonna have to throw against if you want to win, and they didn't win that game. So I'll let you continue, but I agree. He doesn't have a lot of touchdowns for a guy that you want to have a lot of touchdowns in PPR and in fantasy.
Yeah, and so what am I ultimately saying with this? What I'm saying is that the Cowboys don't score a lot of points. And they couldn't really do that with Dak Prescott, and Dak Prescott I wouldn't say is a top 10 quarterback, but I think he's a serviceable quarterback for wide receivers. You can agree with me or disagree with me on that, but we've seen we've seen this Cowboys team go 12-5 before. So you can't just say he's not a good quarterback. But he wasn't playing that good this year. And I think, there's a lot of reasons to that, but I think if you just take him out of the equation and add in a new quarterback that I don't think is nearly as good as Dak Prescott, I just think it gets a lot worse to a team that's already really bad and one of the biggest disappointments I've probably ever seen in football this year. So that's just kind of my take on CeeDee Lamb. Um, is that all with CeeDee Lamb?
Yeah.
Um, I'll give the floor to you guys. What's a wide receiver you guys want to talk about?
Well, I'm prepared to talk about Zay Flowers because I have him significantly ranked higher than you guys do. So I thought you were going to ask me about Zay. So if you want, we can talk about Zay Flowers, or I'm open to talking about somebody else. But I can just tell you, I had, if we want to touch on it while we're on it now, I had him ranked at 8. He's going up against the Bengals, and I don't really like their secondary. You can argue with me or agree to disagree, but they're ranked 21st right now against receivers. And I mean, that's kind of middle of the pack, but I don't feel like their secondary is anything, too impressive. Maybe you guys disagree, but I mean, they're allowing basically 25 points to receivers. And I know you can make the argument that Zay Flowers has been inconsistent, which he has. I actually needed him like 2 weeks ago to get me 12 points. I was down by 12, and he only got me 4, and they didn't use him because he got injured in that game. But then if you look at, what he did this last week, these last 2 weeks really, against the Browns. I know they lost that game. He was targeted 12 times. So he made up for that performance where he had one catch for 11 yards. He was targeted 12 times and he had another 100-yard game. And then this past week, he was targeted only 6 times, but he had 5 catches, 127 yards. He was averaging 25.4 yards, and he had 2 touchdowns. His longest catch was 53 yards. He's also fifth in yards on the year among receivers with 654. I mean, Mark, I think you were saying it the other day, like rest of season, he might be a top 6, 7 receiver. Like, and that's why I have him at 8. I just feel like The Bengals are starting to pick up momentum. They are starting to win some games. They got off to a really cold start. But the Ravens, as we were talking about when we were talking about the running backs and a little bit of receivers, like along with the Lions, they are one of the hottest offenses in the league. I mean, you add Deontay Johnson into the mix. I thought that was going to hurt him. I debated whether or not I wanted to start Zay Flowers this past week. I did end up starting him, and I'm glad I did because he got me nearly 30 points in fantasy. But I mean, even when you add like another true wide receiver one or 1A, 1B, he still pops off and he has his best game of the year, right? Now Mark Andrews is starting to pick it up. Hasn't impacted Zay Flowers. You have probably the best running back in the game because McCaffrey's been hurt and Derrick Henry in the backfield. Zay Flowers is still continuing to perform. He's only 24. I mean, he's our age, right? I watched this guy at Boston College. He was really good. It's only his second year in the league, and he has been extremely impressive. And I think that speaks also to how good Lamar Jackson is as a quarterback. But I just have him ranked. Maybe I ranked him too high, and it's a little bit of a reaction. But it's hard not to rank him in my top 10 after he has a week like that. I also have him on my team, so I'm a little bit biased there. And I named my team after him. April showers bring Zay Flowers, but I like him a lot as a player. Similar to how you feel about Drake London, that's how I feel about Zay Flowers this year. And I think he's a really good player. For somebody who only has 3 touchdowns on the year, he finds a way to get open. And now with Deontay Johnson joining that offense, it takes a little bit of pressure off of Zay because now he can go to Mark Andrews, he can go to Johnson, he can go to Nelson Aguilar, he can go to anyone. But Zay finds a way to get open, and I think he's an elite route runner. And for that reason, I think he'll have another really good week against Cincinnati. So I have him at 8. I know you guys had him a little bit lower, but you guys want to talk about that? That's just my reasoning why I had him inside my top 10.
Yeah, so the only reason why I have him lower is because when I look at, all of the other players that are ranked ahead of him, I just think those wide receivers tend to have a little bit more of a safer floor. Um, Zay Flowers, I love Zay Flowers. He was also, one of my most drafted players, actually right next to Drake London. Those are two players I made sure to have in every single league. And uh Zay Flowers is actually the wide receiver 9 in PPR formats, on the year through the first 9 weeks. And, I think that's just a testament to how good Zay Flowers is as a player. Now I have him at ranked at 12, but he's, again, Zay Flowers still inside my top 15. If he pops off this week, against the Bengals, which I expect him to do, he'll be inside my top 10 again. And I don't think he'll stop being inside my top 10 because, you're on an elite offense. You are an elite wide receiver. Like, I think it's fair to say he's an elite wide receiver. I don't know if I'd rank him as a top 5 wide receiver, but if you look at who are the better wide receivers in the league, I think Zay Flowers should be mentioned. So like Adam said, he's a great route runner. He's also just a great catcher, and I just think the position that they put Zay Flowers in, he's just able to succeed. So yeah, and it's clear that Lamar Jackson likes to throw to him, and the coach actually acknowledged that Zay Flowers is a very talented player. So I just, to think that Zay Flowers is going to fade out of the picture of the Baltimore Ravens and they're just going to stop using him now after everything he's done through the past 3 to 4 weeks now.
Yeah, really 5 weeks. Because one more thing I want to mention real quick.
Yeah.
He he's had 4 100-yard games in the last 5 weeks, and the only game where he didn't have 100 yards was that Monday Night Football game like 2 weeks ago, where he, like I said, I needed him to get me 12 points to win, and I ended up losing. He only had 4, but that was because he had 1 catch for 11 yards the entire game. He did get hurt, but then I think he came back in. They just didn't use him as much. I guess they were just kind of trying to play it safe with him. But even going back to the last time they played the Bengals, so 5 weeks ago, essentially 5 weeks ago, I mean, that was his first 100-yard game of the season when this all kind of started. He had 7 receptions, 12 targets, 111 yards, and then finished that off the next week. That was the game where in the first half he had like 9 receptions. He had all of his receptions on 9 targets for 132 yards. Then he got hurt. Then he played the Browns. Same thing, had 7 receptions, 12 targets, 115 yards. And then this past week, 5 receptions, 6 targets, 127 yards, and he had 2 touchdowns. I mean, he only has 3 touchdowns on the year. His other touchdown came on week 2, but he is clearly at like a high right now. Like in the last 5 weeks, going back to the last time they played the Bengals, and now they're going to play them again. He's been on a roll. I can't really look at that Monday Night Football game against the Bucks because like he got hurt, but I guarantee you, if he didn't get hurt, he probably would have had. I don't know if it would have been another 100-yard game, but I think he would have had, at least like 15, 20 fantasy points PPR.
Oh
Sorry to
yeah,
cut you off. I just feel like the last 5 weeks he's been red hot, and I have to rank him high.
yeah. Hunter, would you like to add anything about Zay Flowers?
Yeah, so I'm gonna take the negative side here. I'll start with Mark. I'm gonna start with something I agree with on Mark. Is the issue of the floor and ceiling. Obviously he's been good the last few weeks, but overall I think he's kind of a little inconsistent. He's got a decent amount of points each week, which is good without the touchdowns. Like with the if he got more touchdowns, then it'd be insane. Um, but yeah, inconsistency is kind of my main takeaway from him. Obviously, I still think he's a very good receiver, which brings me to my next point. He's not an elite receiver. To be elite, I think you gotta be top 10 without a doubt. No exceptions. Like even if you're like 11 or 12. I don't know where I'd rank Zay at the moment, but it's not top 10. I don't even know if it's top 15. It might be top 15, but on the lower end of that. Um I what I'm curious about is Deontay Johnson got traded there, I believe, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
How's that gonna work? I mean, Deontay Johnson.
Worked out this past week for them, right? He played, right? Deontay Johnson? I think he
he,
played.
he didn't he didn't play a lot.
Yeah, he didn't play.
Oh, I didn't see much of the game.
Hey,
I thought he played, but
I could answer that question.
He was
Um, how I think it would work is that I think, like I said, the coach acknowledged that Zay Flowers is a very talented player. And I think when you're getting high praise like that from your coach, I don't think that all of a sudden means, okay, well, now we're going to use Deontay Johnson. So, go have fun. I think that this will take targets away from Zay Flowers. I mean, yeah, you add in Deontay Johnson, you can't just not throw to him. But like, I also think that this could just raise the passing volume overall for the Ravens. So it'd be kind of, a net loss, net gain type situation. That's just my takeaway. But yeah.
yeah,
yeah.
I think two things. Number one, I do think this won't. At first, I was nervous. I agree. Like I saw Deontay Johnson was traded to the Ravens. I thought, like from outside of fantasy perspective, I thought, oh, this is great. The Ravens are a contender. They're trying to actually compete with the Chiefs to win the AFC and potentially win the Super Bowl or get to the Super Bowl. But from fantasy perspective, as a Zay Flowers owner, somebody who owns Zay Flowers, it's like, you kind of raise some red flags. Like, is this going to work? I agree with your point, but I'm looking at Deontay Johnson's numbers now, and I mean, I know he was on Carolina, so it's kind of tough to evaluate how good he's going to be on Baltimore. And I didn't realize he didn't play this last week because there's zeros across the board in this past game. Probably just waiting on physicals and stuff like that. But even when he was with Carolina, now again, I know they had Bryce Young and Andy Dalton as their quarterback, but he also has 3 touchdowns on the season. So these are two guys now that like don't really score a lot of touchdowns now on the same offense. So as far as targets go, I mean, he's not. Again, it's tough to evaluate because he was on Carolina. Will he be targeted more on Baltimore? Absolutely, but he wasn't a very he wasn't targeted very much, I would say, when he was with the Panthers. Now, when he was with the Steelers, he definitely broke out. Now, this year with Carolina, it's like he wasn't great, but again, I keep saying it, like he was with Carolina. So the second point I want to make, kind of segueing into that first point, is Baltimore is a run first offense as like anyways. So I think you'll notice like if Justice Hill is out there, they're going to throw. But 90% of the time, I mean, that's not really a fair percentage, but majority of the point, majority of the point, of the time is what I meant to say. Like Lamar's going to run it, is going to keep it himself, or they're just going to hand it off to Derrick Henry because they have one of the best running backs in the game now. So do I think this is going to hurt Zay? Yes, a little bit as far as targets go. As far as touchdowns and yards go, I don't really think it impacts him because Johnson isn't really the type of receiver, just looking at his numbers, that gets you a lot of yards. I think it's more that like when he does get targeted, he makes the most of it. Like this year, he's averaging like 12 yards per catch, which is not like, amazing, but like, 17 yards per catch against the Commanders, 13 yards per catch against the Falcons, 15.3% yards per catch on average against the Raiders. So I think when he does get the ball, he makes the most of it, but he's not really a highly targeted receiver as is. So I don't think this is going to impact Zay as much as we think. I think it will, but I don't think it won't like affect him from being, a top 10 or top 15 receiver rest of the season. But again, it's also really hard to evaluate because he was with Carolina, which is a very big difference than Baltimore, as far as everything goes from offense to quarterbacks to receivers, running back, everything. So it's tough, but I am still confident and optimistic that Zay Flowers will continue to perform well. But maybe we'll have less targets because Johnson is now there. So we'll see. I mean, it's tough.
Sorry, Hunter, did you want to say anything else?
No, I'm all good.
Oh, okay. I feel like we kind of interrupted you a little bit there.
No, it's all good. I had nothing else to say. You're good.
Oh, okay. Um, okay. I kind of want to talk about Hunter's team, Garrett Wilson.
I ranked him a little lower. I realized there were better players ahead. So now he's
Okay.
similar where you guys are. Like I have him at what do I have him now? I have him at
You have him at 7. I have him at 9. Adam has
yeah.
him at 10. So we're all very similar, but I just
Okay.
think I think we've seen it. I think we've seen what this Jets offense is looking to do now, both with Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams. How I evaluate it is that I think Devontae Adams is going to continue to get, the more high percentage catches. So like the little short slant routes, I think that's kind of where Devontae Adams is going to be positioned in. But I think, when we're looking down the field, we tend to see Garrett Wilson get those throws a lot more. And Garrett Wilson has just exploded in fantasy the past few weeks. I mean, he is the wide receiver 3 overall on this through the first 9 weeks. I mean, a couple weeks ago, I think he was like wide receiver 20 or something like that. But he's just been dominating if you had him on your fantasy team. I mean, yeah, I mean the Jets record is still pretty bad, but it's been good for Garrett Wilson owners. And considering he was a first round draft pick, do you guys like to elaborate on that?
Um yeah, I mean Garrett Wilson last year had a crazy amount of targets as a rookie. And this year I think he leads the league in
Yeah.
targets. And
Well,
this guy's in his second season and he's doing this. I mean,
You
not
forget that he's only in
necessarily
his second year. I forgot
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Wait,
third, I think it's third year.
Third
yeah,
year? Oh,
third. Yeah. Okay,
great.
third.
That's still impressive though.
Yeah,
That's
so he's
Still
still
under
really
25.
impressive.
Yeah. I mean, even if he's not getting the ball every time, like if it's not gonna be a reception, he's still clearly getting wide open all the time. Just incredible. And he's doing this against teams, whether they're good secondaries or bad secondaries. And this week, they're going against
the Cardinals, I believe.
not a great secondary. Yes, not a great secondary. That was kind of why I put him ahead of both of you. Um, it's really as simple as that. I think the last few weeks he's really been on a tear, which is nice to see. And I think that really will continue throughout the season. And for a lot of the rest of his career, honestly, I think he's really done a nice job. I'll admit I wasn't like a huge fan of him as a rookie and sophomore. I didn't think he was that great. Then I really like looked at him and he's really blowing my mind. I mean that Jordan logo touchdown.
Catch of the
That's the
year.
best way I
Catch
could
of the year.
describe it.
Yeah. I agree with you. I was gonna mention that catch. Like it's extremely impressive. And
Yeah.
this year, even despite the Jets' struggles, where they lost like what 5 games in a row before winning this past week against the Texans. He
Mhm.
ranks first in receptions, third in yards, and tied for seventh in touchdowns. Like 5 touchdowns is still very impressive when they've had 2 different head coaches and a struggling Aaron Rodgers for, you know, 55-60% of the season, thus far. Really 75, really he struggled like throughout the season. This was probably the best Aaron Rodgers Jets game we've gotten, I think, this past week. Um,
Yeah.
and 9 receptions on 10 targets, 90 yards, the 2 touchdowns. Like we're talking about the Jordan logo one, but like he had a second one too. Like, I mean,
Mhm.
he's incredible. He's insane. And like if the Jets finally find a way to turn it around and like, you know, start winning games and making a push towards the playoffs, like I think it's going to be because of him. I don't think Brees Hall has been that impressive. I'll be honest, when Devontae Adams got traded there, I thought, oh, maybe this will hurt Garrett Wilson a little bit, but like he just played with him and he looked like the best player on the field at all times. So, I mean, we've talked about Devontae Adams being, I mean, Hunter said it before. We've talked about him being like definitely a future Hall of Famer. And didn't you say a couple weeks ago, like he's like one of the most impressive like route runners or has like the most impressive hands you've ever seen? Something like that?
Devontae Adams,
Yeah.
the best route runner I
Yeah,
have ever.
exactly. But Garrett Wilson, even with Devontae Adams there, you would think that would hurt him. He's still performing well. Like we just saw it. And the week before, even though they lost that Patriots game, he had 100 yards, like 113 yards. So I think he's phenomenal and he's on a huge tear. I had him a little bit lower this week. Um, just because I honestly I don't know. I think it was just there were better receivers. I know we keep saying that, but I just feel like there were better receivers with better matchups. But I'm not. I wouldn't be surprised if he had a good week. I'm not scared of the Cardinals secondary. Right, they're playing the Cardinals. The only person in their secondary I can even think of is Buda
Yeah.
Baker. So
Cardinals secondary has actually been
the
better than I
14th, right?
thought they would be this year.
Yeah,
But like I don't know. I don't think they're like good enough to really shut down like elite players.
yeah.
I guess they shut down Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, so they're already making me eat my words. But I don't know. I'm gonna say that again.
Well, that's also because of Achan, like we talked about. So
Maybe it is, but I don't know.
yeah.
I think if you're Tyreek Hill, like you're good enough to get open. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me.
If the Jets can use this past win as momentum, they should win this game against the Cardinals. If they lose this game against the Cardinals, then I think the season's over. I mean, I think the season. I was gonna make the argument that the season might be over for them, but then they won this huge game against the Texans, like on Thursday Night Football in prime time. Garrett Wilson had like the catch of the year, did all these like exciting things. If they can start winning because of that, if that was the spark, new head coach like Devontae, like then yes, I think like he's gonna continue to stay top 10 for me. But if they lose another game, especially this week against the Cardinals, then I don't know. I mean, he's good. It's just the team itself. Like the Jets are just, and I can't really talk 'cause I'm a Giant fan, but they're also just struggling. And what do they have? 3 wins right now? It's not amazing. I mean, it's better than us, but it's not amazing. All right, well, thanks so much for watching Blitz Banter Fantasy on YouTube. You can also follow us on Instagram and Threads, where Mark is worked on some really great graphics as far as memes go, as far as rankings go. We have a lot of great content on Instagram and on Threads. And we'll start working on getting a Twitter, a TikTok, and all other platforms up soon. But thanks so much for watching this episode where we discussed our wide receiver and running back rankings ahead of week 10. Best of luck to your teams. And again, make sure you like and subscribe. It helps out the YouTube algorithm and helps us help you with your teams. Thanks again, and best of luck to your teams.